Good morning. Well, since we are trying different ways to save money, today I'd like to talk about how you can minimize food waste, because buying food and throwing it in the trash is a waste of money. So if you are trying to save money, you are trying to live within your income, you might want to look at how you buy your food, how you cook, and if you waste quite a bit of food. So the first things I will say is, if you like to buy fresh vegetables and they tend to go bad in your fridge, one way you can do that to minimize waste of those vegetables will be to just prep them as soon as you get home from your shopping, to prep them and put in the freezer. That will save you money and that will save you time later when you are ready to cook. That's how I do my vegetables. I don't like to store vegetables in my fridge. And during summertime, we eat straight from the garden. So if I'm cooking and I need vegetables, I'll just go in the garden and harvest what I need. But then when I harvest excess vegetables, I'll just rinse them in my sink, chop them up and put them in zip bags, freezer bags, and put in my freezer. So I have test freezers, not just one, but I have one specifically for vegetables, and I will just write the date and the name of the vegetables and put in my freezer. Those vegetables are what I use in winter time, so I don't spend time in winter time when we have shorter days, to prep vegetables. I just get them from my freezer and cook with them. So, but in summertime, I just eat straight from my garden. So that's something you can see if that works for you. You don't have to have your fresh vegetables in your fridge. And I do know that when you don't have fresh vegetables on hand, that limits what you can cook. That's true. But research proves that vegetables tend to lose up to 80% of their nutrient within the first 2 hours of being harvested. So when you harvest, let's say you grow your own vegetables and you harvest it from the garden, within the first 2 hours, your vegetables could lose up to 80% of its nutrients. So it's good when you live in the garden and you harvest your vegetables, you are not going to use them, that same day. Is a good idea to just rinse them, prep them, and put them in the freezer. They will keep better that way. So when you purchase them from the grocery store, it's a good idea to just use the same principle. That way they are not even going to go bad in your fridge. So you can minimize waste by prepping your vegetables and put them in the freezer where they can last longer. The second way, that's the first way. So, and related to that as well, is if you like to buy onion on sale, or you like to buy a lot of onions, if your onion does not even go in the fridge, just leave it on the counter. But if you remark that your onions are going bad, you can chop them up, take the skin off, rinse it, chop them up, and put them in the bags and freeze them. That's how I used to do when I used to buy onion on sales. I would just chop them up, put them in a bag, and freeze them. When you have leftover meat in your fridge, a small amount of meat, you can have a big container in your freezer. Sometimes I use ice cream container. I will just wash it up and put it in my freezer, or you can use glass jar. Sometimes I use quart jar as well. And you just put those leftover meats in the jar until the jar is full. Or when you are ready to make soup, you can take that out and use those leftover meat in your soup. That will save you money. because meat is expensive. If you don't know how to use those little bit of meat, leftover meat, yeah, it's good to just put in the freezer. You can be used as freezer bag as well, and use those leftover meat in your soup. One way you can minimize waste as well when it comes to food is foods high in carbs, carbohydrates. It's good not to cook a lot of it at once. So like rice, pasta, I don't like to have leftover of those food in my fridge. Pasta and rice are very easy to cook. I like to have enough for the meal we are going to eat and leftover for lunch the next day. And after that, I just don't want to have any more leftover in my fridge, because those food high in carbs, they tend to dry out in the fridge or go hard. So, and when they are there in the fridge for some days, they don't seem appealing to me. So if you are like that as well, it's just better you cook enough for what you need for your dinner, your lunch, or a leftover for the next day, but not more than that. That way you are not going to have too many leftovers in your fridge. Personally, by the end of the week, I like to see my fridge empty. I can have a freezer full of vegetables or food, non-cooked food, but vegetables, but I like to have my fridge bare by the end of the week. That proves to me that we eat our leftovers. So one way you can save as well, I have my notes here. I like to have a note when I'm talking so that I don't lose track of what I wanted to talk about. So one way you can save as well on food is when you are cooking your dinner, your lunch, your meal. If that's possible, depending on what you are cooking, personally that's how I do it, but not all the time, but I do that quite a bit, is to cook the meal, to cook your meat separately from the meal that you are cooking. That way, if you have leftover meat, you can use it with other meals as well. For example, when I'm baking chicken, I'll just bake chicken and I'll have chicken in my fridge that we can use with rice, pasta, and all other things, and leftover shredded can be used for sandwich and all that. If I'm baking roast, pork roast, I'll bake pork roast and I'll have pork roast in my fridge, and then I'll come up with recipes or meals that I will cook to go with that roast. But I don't like to cook the meat and the meal together. I do that when I know that what I'm cooking is just going to be for that meal that we are going to eat and leftover for the next day lunch. That's pretty much it. So it could be like stir fry rice, for example, soup, for example, because soup you have to mix everything together. So I don't like to have a lot of leftover of those things, that I will mix the food, the carbs and the meat together, the vegetables together. I don't like to have leftover of those things, because yeah, they don't seem appealing to me when I have too many a large amount of those leftovers in my fridge. So that's one way you can do it as well. You can have your meat cooked separately and have it in the fridge, and when you cook your meals, you just come up with recipes that can go together with the meat that you have already cooked and that you have in the fridge. And having that roast, if somebody doesn't want, let's say that I have a pork roast already in the fridge ready to be eaten, well, and I cook rice, somebody doesn't like the soup, because I can make a soup without putting meat in it, and I will have that as well in the fridge. So somebody doesn't want stew on his or her rice, like my kids, for example. One of them might decided, at least two of them might decide not to have stew on their rice, and they might just ask for olive oil. So I'll serve them the rice and the pork roast, and I'll drizzle that olive oil on there for them. And some other times I will say, well, you can have a little bit of the stew, and then I'll put the meat on the side for them as well. So that's why I like to have my meat cooked, be separate from the meals that I'm going to cook, so that everything can go together and people in my house have the choice, to choose what they want in their dishes. So one way you can save as well will be to serve small portion to little kids in your house. So if you have kids, it's good to just serve them small portion. That's what I do, and I don't mind when they come back to ask for more. And sometimes when they are playing around, I'll let them know that once they start playing is a sign that they are full. So they have times to come to ask for more until I put everything in the fridge. So that teach them to focus and eat their food before they play. But yes, it's a good idea to serve them small portions so that they don't waste food. And my kids, when they have leftovers, I'll just ask them, I'll give them 2 cups balls. I have a lot of those glass balls. I'll just give it to them and ask them to put their food in there and close it and to put in the fridge, and that's leftover they have to eat, and they know it as well. So that's one way you can minimize it. But it's okay if you have a sick child and he or she doesn't eat his or her food. It's okay to throw that food in the trash. They don't need to eat those leftover food when they are sick. At least that's what I do. And one way you can save on food waste is not really about saving, but is if you have those waste, well, one thing you can do is, if you have a garden, just put it in the garden. But make sure you don't have meat in your food waste. Vegetables, cooked rice, pasta, carbs, and all those, just spread it in your garden. Especially if you like to mulch, just spread it in your garden. They will break down very quickly, and that will feed the organism in your soil, and your soil will feed you as well. So that's one way of minimizing your waste if you already have one to start with. Thank you for watching. I'm Afiavi Ojune Marie-Ninette Liberman, creators of Marie-Ninette Liberman's YouTube channel and owners of Nina Soap. And my website is ninasoap.com, and our goal is to increase our net worth while we live within budget without sacrificing the quality of our life. Thank you.